Chapter 5. Angst and Despair. 5.1 Understanding Angst. The term angst is closely associated with existential philosophy, a term that describes the form of anxiety intrinsic to human existence. It captures a complex emotional state that individuals encounter when they confront the inherent challenges of being alive, particularly the realization of their own freedom and the existential responsibilities that accompany it. Unlike ordinary fear that has a distinct and visible source, angst is more nebulous and is often directed at nothing in particular, or rather at being itself. It emanates from the human capacity to reflect on past decisions, the unpredictability of the future, and the reality of one's mortality. Understanding angst requires a detailed examination of its nature, origins, and implications for human existence. It is imperative to distinguish angst from everyday anxiety. While everyday anxiety might relate to specific events or concerns within a person's life, such as job security or personal relationships, angst is far more existential in nature. It arises from a fundamental concern with one's freedom and isolation in the universe. From an existentialist perspective, angst is not merely an emotional response, but a profound realization about the true nature of human existence. People face the vast, indifferent universe and are bound to create meaning in an inherently meaningless world. This weight of creating and sustaining one's own meaning and values can be cause for profound angst. Angst is tied to the concept of freedom. Existential philosophers argue that humans are condemned to be free, as stated famously by Jean-Paul Sartre. This freedom is not liberating but burdensome, because it leaves individuals solely responsible for their choices, actions, and ultimately, their essence. The awareness that with every decision one shapes one's destiny and defines what it means to be oneself can be a source of existential angst. This burden of freedom becomes clearer when faced with life's crossroads, at moments where choices are irreversible and their consequences uncertain. The inevitability of isolation is another cornerstone that leads to the experience of angst. Human beings are subjectively experiencing creatures, and no matter how much empathy one might have, the subjective experience of the other cannot be fully understood or shared. This separation, an unbridgeable gap between oneself and others, emphasizes a fundamental isolation that can cause angst. Each individual must navigate the world alone, making decisions and experiencing their consequences in inescapable solitude. This existential isolation is not rectified by social interactions or relationships, as each human fundamentally remains an island unto themselves. Uncertainty about the future and the inevitability of death can potentiate existential angst. The open-ended nature of the future, with its infinite possibilities, also means that there is no predetermined fate or destiny to rely on. Knowing that there is no absolute certainty about what the future holds, and yet having to move forward and make choices, can lead to an experiential crisis laden with angst. Death serves as the ultimate unknown and the final limitation on human freedom, an endpoint that gives life urgency, but also delineates its futility. Confronting death's certainty without definitive knowledge of what, if anything, lies beyond, can instill a deep sense of angst. The concept of meaning, or rather the lack thereof, in the universe is essential to understanding angst. Existentialists posit that the universe is indifferent to human concerns and devoid of inherent meaning or value. This leads to the notion of the absurd, with which individuals must grapple. The absurdity of looking for meaning in a world without it generates a persistent sense of dissonance. Angst is rooted in this confrontation with absurdity, a struggle to derive or construct meaning in one's life against the backdrop of a silent universe. Angst also reflects the limitations of knowledge and reason. Humans are capable of great intellectual achievements, but there are bounds to what can be known or understood about existence. The recognition of these limitations can incite angst, as it confronts people with the profound incompleteness of their understanding of the world. The unanswered and perhaps unanswerable questions about existence continuously remind individuals of their intellectual confines, contributing to a sense of angst stemming from the mystery that surrounds existence. Angst is also a source of creativity and authenticity. It compels individuals to confront their true selves and the reality of their situation, leading to deeper self-awareness. This awareness can then become the basis for genuine actions and decisions, as individuals seek to create lives that are true to their own values and identities. Although often seen in a negative light, existential angst can thus be a catalyst for personal growth and self-actualization. By embracing angst rather than fleeing from it, individuals can find a path to living more authentic lives. Dealing with angst requires courage and resolve. Since angst is an integral part of existence, it cannot be remedied in the conventional sense. Existentialists assert that one must confront and accept angst, acknowledging it as a condition of being human. Running from angst is seen as self-deception or bad faith, an attempt to escape the reality of one's freedom and responsibility. Courageous endurance and the enduring commitment to face life's inherent challenges are therefore necessary to authentically engage with angst. The societal and cultural context is relevant to the experience of angst. How individuals interpret and respond to angst is partly shaped by the society they find themselves in. For example, some cultures might provide narratives or frameworks, such as religion or communal values, that purport to offer answers or solutions to existential concerns. Whether these are accepted or rejected can deeply influence how one deals with the angst they experience. Societal expectations and norms thus become both a source of and solution to existential angst, shaping its expression and management. Finally, angst in the field of existentialism leads to a deeper inquiry into the meaning and value of human emotions. Emotions are typically classified and responded to on the basis of their apparent positive or negative impacts. However, existential angst calls into question the adequacy of such simple evaluations. Since it is both a distressing experience and a potential impetus for achieving authenticity, angst demonstrates the complexity of the emotional landscape of human existence. It reveals the dual nature of emotions, as they can simultaneously be harbingers of discomfort, as well as gateways to profound personal insight and development. Angst is an intricate and multifaceted concept in existentialist philosophy. To understand angst is to delve into the core of existential thought and the human condition. It encompasses the challenges of freedom, isolation, the meaning of life, the limitations of human knowledge, and the certainty of death. Each of these aspects contributes to the depth of existential angst, which permeates the lived experience of the individual. Facing and accepting angst can lead to a more authentic existence, whereas denying it can result in self-deception. Through a comprehensive understanding of angst, we come closer to grasping the essence of what it means to be human. 5.2. The role of despair. Despair, within the framework of existentialism, is a fundamental emotion that arises from the individual's confrontation with the absence of inherent meaning in the world. Distinguished from common sadness, despair in this context has a deeper philosophical significance. It emerges when a person faces the vastness of freedom and the weight of responsibility that accompanies the existential belief that each person is the author of their own essence. When individuals comprehend the extent of their agency and the lack of predetermined purpose, the feeling of despair can become prevalent. It does not merely signify a moment of intense sorrow, but rather a profound grappling with the conditions of human existence. Existential despair is thus an acknowledgement of the limits and contingencies of human life. It acknowledges that the choices one makes while free are constrained by external factors such as society, biology, and circumstance. This awareness can lead to a sense of futility, a fear that despite one's autonomy, the eventual outcomes may not necessarily align with one's intentions or desires. The role of despair in existentialism is not to wallow in hopelessness, but to provoke a deeper engagement with the realities of self and world, a condition from which authentic existence can emerge. However, existentialism posits that despair is not the endpoint, but a catalyst for self-realization. The feeling compels individuals to confront their realities and choose paths that align with their genuine self, rather than what external forces dictate. It prompts a reflective pause, a moment to evaluate one's current state, aspirations, and the congruence, or lack thereof, between the two. In responding to despair, a person is empowered to take ownership of their condition and, through active choices, affirm their existence and create their own essence. Despair also plays a critical role in highlighting the contrast between authentic and inauthentic modes of existence as conceptualized within existentialist philosophy. Authenticity involves embracing the reality of one's freedom and taking responsibility for one's choices, whereas inauthenticity involves evading this responsibility and living an unexamined life. Through the lens of despair, an individual becomes aware of the significance of living authentically. Despair can thus be seen as an uncomfortable yet vital signpost pointing towards authentic living. The experience of despair is linked to the concept of the absurd, famously articulated by Albert Camus. The absurd arises from the human need to find meaning in life, despite the universe's indifference to our existence. When faced with the absurd, despair is a natural response, yet Camus suggests that instead of leading to defeat, confronting the absurd can result in an emboldened acceptance of life's intrinsic meaninglessness. This embrace of the absurd allows an individual to live life fully, within the parameters of their own values and not those imposed by an external order. Furthermore, Søren Kierkegaard, often regarded as a precursor to existentialist thought, dissected the notion of despair into different aspects and intensities. He argued that despair is an ever-present undercurrent in human life due to the tension between the finite and the infinite aspects of human existence. Kierkegaard analyzed despair not only as a consequence of the acknowledgement of one's freedoms and limitations, but also as a failure to be fully oneself, a failure to integrate the eternal within the temporal. By discussing despair, existentialists do not encourage a defeatist viewpoint, but rather aspire to instill a recognition of human capability and resilience. A central assertion is that through the recognition and acceptance of despair, individuals can actively engage in reshaping their lives. This reshaping is achieved by asserting one's individuality and refusing to submit to external definitions of meaning and value. Existentialism asserts that in the face of despair, maintaining the courage to be oneself is both the challenge and reward of human existence. Through the discourse on despair, existentialism also refutes the idea that happiness is the sole indicator of a life well lived. It suggests an alternative measure, the depth of engagement with one's existence. Despair, then, is a measure of one's confrontation with this depth. It signals the inner conflict that arises when an individual assesses their life honestly, recognizing areas of dissonance between lived experience and personal conviction. This recognition often precipitates a reorientation or transformation through which a person strives for a more profound alignment with their core values. Despair, in existentialist terms, extends beyond individual experience into the social and political realm. It reflects a broader disillusionment with societal norms, collective illusions, and superficial distractions that keep individuals from facing their individual and collective realities. By accepting despair as a part of the human condition, individuals can become more attuned to the authentic desires of self and others. This awareness can lead to increased empathy and solidarity, as the shared experience of despair has the potential to unite people in the common pursuit of meaningful existence. The existentialist perspective on despair serves as a multifaceted tool for philosophical and personal development. It advocates that, amid the tribulations brought about by despair, there is an opportunity for transformation and liberation. Despair is not merely a symptom of existential awareness, but is intrinsic to the process through which individuals can achieve authenticity. Upholding the role of despair, existentialists urge each person to seize it as a transformative force, propelling them towards a more genuine expression of human freedom, responsibility, and ultimately, a deeper understanding of the human condition. 5.3. Confronting nothingness. Angst, in the context of existentialism, is a profound and deeply felt emotional state that arises from the recognition of one's absolute freedom and the inherent meaninglessness of life. This freedom is not liberating, but is instead experienced as a burden because it leaves the individual fully responsible for their actions and choices. Despair, closely linked to angst, emerges from the realization that no external rules or guidelines can provide absolute certainty or purpose for one's life. The term nothingness plays a central role in existential philosophy. It represents the void or absence of inherent meaning in the universe, as well as the non-existence that defines death. It is part of the human condition to confront this nothingness, which often occurs during periods of reflection or major life changes. Individuals may encounter the feeling that their lives, choices, and personal identities could just as easily not have been, highlighting the contingent nature of existence. The confrontation with nothingness typically induces a sense of dread or anxiety, which existentialists argue is not an indication of pathology, but a natural response to understanding the true nature of human existence. This confrontation encourages individuals to question foundational beliefs and the very purpose of life. It challenges one's self-identity, revealing the fragility and temporary nature of human constructs and societal norms. The emotional response to confronting nothingness can result in existential despair. This despair is a recognition that without universal or objective values to cling to, one must create their own meaning within an indifferent or even hostile universe. Existential despair is often a necessary precursor to personal growth and self-actualization, as it pushes individuals to actively engage in creating their lives and values. Additionally, confronting nothingness rewards the individual with an opportunity for authenticity. Freed from the constraints of imposed values and meanings, one can choose to live according to self-determined principles. Authenticity is achieved through the acceptance of nothingness, embracing freedom, and assuming responsibility for one's own existence. One common misconception is that the confrontation with nothingness inevitably leads to pessimism or nihilism. While it is true that recognizing the absence of inherent meaning can lead some to nihilistic conclusions, existential philosophy generally advocates for a more positive outcome. It opens the possibility of finding or creating one's own meaning and deriving satisfaction from the personal responsibility of doing so. Existential angst and despair can also fuel creativity and passion, as individuals may respond to the void by seeking to leave their mark on the world. Art, literature, and other creative pursuits often serve as outlets for the existential anxiety that arises from confronting nothingness. Through these expressions, individuals can define their essence and create tangible representations of their chosen values and meanings. In the therapeutic context, existential therapists help clients face nothingness by encouraging them to live more authentically. They aim to help clients accept the lack of objective meaning and understand that they can still lead fulfilling lives by making personal choices. The realization that one can construct their own meaning can be empowering and contribute to overcoming feelings of despair. Confronting nothingness often leads to a transformation in one's approach to life. Instead of seeking external validation or objective truths, individuals learn to derive satisfaction from their own subjective experiences and personal journey. This process involves rejecting societal pressures to conform and instead living in a way that is consistent with one's own values and beliefs. Confronting nothingness is a central theme in existentialism that can lead to a range of emotional experiences, from despair to empowerment. Recognizing the void compels individuals to face their freedom, create their own meaning, and live authentically. Though challenging, this confrontation offers the opportunity for personal growth and the development of a deeply personal approach to life. Existentialists argue that by acknowledging and taking responsibility for their own existence, individuals can live more fully and have a more profound impact on the world. 5.4. Angst as a motivational force. The notion of angst, central to existentialist thought, is often perceived merely as a paralyzing force. However, angst can also serve as a significant motivational force, one that propels individuals towards self-realization and authentic existence. This dual nature of angst is particularly apparent within the existential framework, where the experience of existential anxiety is not an end in itself, but a starting point for personal growth. Angst, in this context, stimulates a confrontation with life's inherent uncertainties and the freedom we bear in making choices. Crucially, existential angst arises from the awareness of our ultimate responsibility for the actions we undertake and the life we shape. The motivational aspect of angst stems from its capacity to bring forth the realization that we are not bound by predetermined paths. When confronted with the vast expanse of possibilities, the individual can experience a profound sense of liberation. Angst exposes the contingency of one's current state of being, thereby encouraging a reevaluation of values and beliefs. This reevaluation can be deeply uncomfortable, but it is also what fuels a transformation in perspective. The confrontation with angst pushes individuals to actively define who they are and who they wish to become, rather than passively accepting an identity imposed by others or by societal norms. Angst can fuel the search for meaning in an apparently indifferent universe. This search is inherently motivational because it drives individuals to seek significance in their actions and to imbue their lives with a sense of purpose. Although the existentialist viewpoint acknowledges that meaning is not inherent in the world, it posits that meaning can be created through individual action and choice. Thus, the experience of angst, by highlighting the absence of inherent meaning, challenges individuals to create their own meaning, to define their own essence through their existence. Acting as a motivational force, angst compels individuals to confront head-on the temporality and finitude of their existence. Recognition of the inevitability of death, rather than leading to despair, can motivate a more intense and passionate engagement with life. This acute awareness of mortality encourages individuals to live authentically, with an understanding that their time to do so is limited. Ultimately, angst can therefore act as a catalyst for individuals to prioritize and engage in actions that align with their genuine interests and values, rather than deferring to the external expectations or norms. Angst motivates by setting up a perpetual state of self-assessment and reflection. The discomfort that comes from existential anxiety provokes continual questioning and critique of one's own life decisions. This continuous process of evaluation ensures that complacency is countered, as the individual remains engaged in a dynamic process of growth and self-definition. It is within this ongoing process that individuals develop a deeper understanding of what truly matters to them, and can then take steps to align their lives accordingly. In essence, the motivational power of angst lies in its relentless challenge to an individual's current state, pushing them towards an authentic mode of existence. The recognition that existence precedes essence, that life is not innately endowed with meaning, can at first appear daunting. However, this recognition also places the responsibility of carving out a meaningful existence firmly in the hands of the individual. The angst associated with this responsibility drives the individual to create, to express, and to determine a path that is truly their own. The dread felt in the face of boundless freedom becomes a motivational force, pushing individuals to engage with the world in a manner that reflects their unique identity and aspirations. Angst also serves as a motivational force by fostering resilience. The existential anxiety that accompanies the notion of making choices in a world devoid of absolute values can be overwhelming. Nevertheless, through grappling with this anxiety, individuals can develop the fortitude to withstand life's inherent ambiguities. Resilience is cultivated as individuals learn to navigate the absence of clear directives, making decisions that are in keeping with their personal integrity and accepting the consequences that follow. This resilience is integral to the pursuit of an authentic life, as it enables individuals to persist in the face of existential challenges. Furthermore, angst fosters creativity by compelling individuals to venture beyond the comfortable and the familiar in search of authenticity. Since the existential perspective denies the existence of objective values or prescribed life paths, individuals are free to chart their own course. This freedom, although potentially anxiety-inducing, also opens up a realm of creative possibilities. The necessity to define oneself and make sense of one's place in the world can inspire a creative engagement with life that is deeply personal and reflective of an individual's true self. Creativity, driven by angst, is essentially an act of self-assertion in a world that offers no clear answers. Another way in which angst can be motivational is through its capacity to deepen interpersonal relationships. When individuals confront their own existential solitude, they may feel a drive to form genuine connections with others. The realization that each person is an autonomous being, responsible for their own existence, can foster a profound respect for the autonomy and choices of others. In turn, this can lead to the creation of relationships that are based on mutual understanding, authenticity, and respect. Deep, meaningful connections can serve as an antidote to the alienation and isolation that often accompany angst. Lastly, angst's motivating force has implications for ethical behavior and social engagement. When the individual faces the anxiety of making choices without the comfort of moral absolutes, a sense of personal accountability is heightened. This accountability can steer individuals towards considering the broader impact of their actions and engaging with the world in a more conscientious manner. Angst, therefore, can motivate an ethical existence that is marked by a commitment to actions that are congruent with one's values and contribute positively to the wider community. The drive to live with authenticity and responsibility can inspire a kind of ethical activism, where individuals strive to make the world more reflective of their own ethical commitments. Whereas angst is often characterized by themes of dread and anxiety, it is also a profound motivational force within the existential paradigm. It propels individuals to confront the deepest questions of existence, to forge their own paths, to connect authentically with others, and to participate ethically in the world. By embracing the motivational aspects of angst, individuals are positioned to seek a life marked by personal significance, resilience, creativity, and ethical engagement, despite existential uncertainties. 5.5 Overcoming Despair. Despair, a concept central to existentialist thought, embodies the individual's confrontation with the apparent meaninglessness of existence. To overcome despair, one must first recognize its presence and sources within oneself. This recognition is critical, as it serves as the catalyst for personal transformation, a central theme in existentialism. Human beings encounter despair when they grapple with the fundamental questions of their own existence, such as their purpose and the inevitability of death. To transcend despair, it's essential to embrace the responsibility for creating one's own meaning in life. Overcoming despair is inherently a process of self-realization and acceptance. An individual must accept the limitations imposed by their nature and circumstances, while acknowledging their ability to exercise freedom within these confines. Existential thinkers argue that freedom is not simply the capacity to choose among alternatives, but is the acceptance of the consequences that follow from those choices. The process often involves a profound reassessment of values and priorities, accompanied by an authentic, genuine engagement with one's personal freedom. The notion of despair, according to existential thought, entails a lack of connection to one's authentic self. Hence, a pivotal step in overcoming despair is to strive for authenticity. Authentic living involves making choices that are congruent with one's true self, rather than conforming to societal expectations or external pressures. One must ascertain what is truly important on a personal level, and make decisions that reflect these deeply held values. Achieving authenticity can diminish the feelings of despair by anchoring the individual in a sense of self-defined purpose and identity. A critical component of overcoming despair is facing it directly. This involves confronting the feelings of anxiety and existential dread without resorting to self-deception or avoidance strategies. Many existentialists suggest that by confronting despair, individuals can achieve a higher state of consciousness. This heightened awareness is referred to as enlightenment in some existentialist discourses. Through this enlightenment, individuals can perceive their existence from a perspective that acknowledges both its limitations and its potentials, reducing the existential weight of despair. Existentialist philosophy posits that individuals derive meaning from their engagements with the world around them. To overcome despair, one should actively engage in life-affirming activities that provide a sense of purpose. This could involve creative endeavors, building relationships, or contributing positively to the community. These activities do not inherently carry meaning, rather they become meaningful through the individual's commitment and depth of involvement. Resilience is fundamental in the face of life's inherent absurdities and suffering. Existentialism suggests that it is through struggle and perseverance that individuals craft a narrative of personal growth and triumph. To overcome despair, it's essential to develop resilience, which enables a person to navigate through life's adversities while maintaining a focus on their chosen values and goals. This development of resilience is an ongoing practice, not a one-time achievement. Existentialists acknowledge the role of human connection in overcoming despair. Meaningful relationships and authentic connections with others can serve as a crucial buffer against feelings of isolation and meaninglessness. By forging genuine relationships based on shared values and mutual respect, individuals can find solace and support, which are vital for facing existential challenges. Thus, the social dimension of existence is treated not as a distraction but as a resource for surmounting despair. Developing a philosophical or spiritual worldview can also assist in overcoming despair. Such a worldview provides a framework for understanding life's experiences and one's place in the universe. Whether through religious faith, philosophical contemplation, or personal spirituality, this framework can offer solace and direction. It doesn't necessarily resolve all existential concerns, but can help individuals to navigate their journey with a sense of coherence and composure. Physical and mental self-care play an important role in overcoming despair. Taking care of one's body through exercise, proper nutrition, and sufficient sleep can enhance one's energy levels and overall mood. Similarly, ensuring mental wellness through practices like mindfulness, therapy, and healthy coping mechanisms is beneficial. A holistic approach to self-care can help build psychological fortitude to face the challenges that lead to despair. Lastly, overcoming despair is a dynamic process that may evolve over the course of an individual's life. It is not a state to be permanently achieved, but a condition to be continuously managed. The search for meaning and purpose is a lifelong journey marked by cycles of despair and renewal. Recognition of this cyclic nature can equip individuals to anticipate and adapt to existential challenges as they arise, maintaining a sense of balance and perspective in their pursuit of a meaningful life. 5.6. The concept of the absurd. The concept of the absurd plays a central role in existentialist thought. It represents the tension that arises when the human tendency to seek inherent value and meaning in life comes into conflict with the apparent silence or indifference of the universe. The absurd is not a feature of the external world, but rather a product of human consciousness and our desire for rational explanations and understanding. Philosopher Albert Camus famously addressed the notion of the absurd in his works, arguing that the realization of the absurdity of existence is an inescapable phenomenon that can profoundly affect our lives and choices. For existentialists, the absurd arises out of the human condition and the world's refusal to cater to our demands for purpose and order. The lack of any objective meaning in the universe means that any meaning and purpose must be created by individuals themselves. This realization can lead to a sense of liberation for some, but it also has the potential to induce despair. For existentialist thinkers, the key challenge is how one responds to this recognition of absurdity. It is a call to individuals to assert their own essence through their actions and decisions, even in the face of an indifferent or chaotic universe. It's important to note that the absurd does not only relate to the grand scheme of life, but also to everyday occurrences and situations. Moments of absurdity can occur when our expectations or attempts to find meaning clash with the random or illogical nature of life. These moments can provoke a cognitive dissonance that forces us to confront the limitations of reason and to re-evaluate our understanding of our place in the world. Camus highlights this in his essay, The Myth of Sisyphus, where he uses the Greek myth to illustrate the absurd hero who, aware of the futility of his task, continues to roll a boulder up a hill only for it to roll down each time he nears the top. While some might assume that acknowledging the absurd necessarily leads to nihilism, the belief that life is void of purpose, meaning, and intrinsic value, existentialists view it as an opportunity to carve out personal meaning in the face of an uncaring universe. Nihilism is but one possible response to the absurd, while existentialism often advocates for an active recognition and confrontation with the absurd as a pathway to freedom. This freedom refers to the ability of humans to create and live by their own values, rather than conform to prescribed notions of what life should be. The self-aware acknowledgement of the absurd can also promote a sense of solidarity with others, as it is a fundamental aspect of the human condition. This collective experience of absurdity has the potential to bind people together, as they can empathize with the shared struggle against the irrationality of existence. In this sense, a community of individuals can find mutual support through the recognition that everyone must navigate a world devoid of inherent meaning, and where each person is responsible for creating their own purpose. The absurd is also a call to action. It challenges individuals to live authentically and passionately, making conscious choices that reflect their true interests and desires. Authenticity in this context means living in accordance with one's own values, rather than those imposed by society or tradition. The recognition of the absurd can encourage people to pursue their passion with increased vigor, precisely because there is no dictated purpose to existence that could potentially limit or undermine their personal pursuits. This perspective on the absurd suggests that far from being a cause for despair, the absurd condition may be a catalyst for a more engaged and intentional approach to living. Existentialists propose that one can either choose to escape the absurd through denial or self-deception, or face it directly and seek to rise above it. This latter approach entails embracing the freedom that comes from understanding that any meaning in life must come from one's own passion and decision-making. The notion of the absurd is not without its critiques. Some argue that the existentialists' emphasis on individual meaning-making overlooks the intersubjective nature of human existence, that is, the fact that meaning is often created communally, through shared language, culture, and relationships. These critics suggest that personal meaning is inherently connected to, and often arises within the context of social interactions, and cannot be considered entirely self-generated. Nevertheless, the concept of the absurd remains a powerful and influential idea within existentialist philosophy. It provokes reflection on the nature of existence and challenges individuals to consider their own role in creating a meaningful life. By refusing to offer an easy answer or resolution to the tension generated by the absurd, existentialism presents a philosophical perspective that is as demanding as it is profound. The concept of the absurd epitomizes the existential challenge, to find meaning in a seemingly meaningless world. It is not merely an abstract philosophical puzzle, but a lived human experience that encompasses moments of doubt, confusion, and existential anxiety. Existentialism does not view the absurd as an abyss into which one must fall, but rather as a horizon to confront and engage with. It is within this confrontation that individuals can exercise their freedom, define their essence, and assert their existence against the indifferent backdrop of the universe. 5.7. Coping with the absurd. The confrontation with the absurd aspects of existence often leads to a profound sense of angst and despair. Angst is a term that is closely related to the existentialist thought process, primarily used to describe the inner conflict that arises when one realizes the inherent meaninglessness of life. This realization challenges the individual's preconceived notions of purpose and can result in a deep-seated feeling of unease. It is a form of suffering that is existential in nature, touching upon the very essentials of human existence, such as freedom, isolation, and mortality. Through coping with this experience, individuals can engage with existence more authentically, developing a personal sense of meaning despite the apparent absurdity. Existential despair is another significant aspect that often accompanies the recognition of the absurd. It is different from common notions of sadness or depression, as it stems from the thought that life's endeavors might ultimately be without purpose. The weight of this despair can be paralyzing, leading to a state of stasis where an individual feels unable to act due to the perceived futility of action. However, within existential thought, the acknowledgement of despair is a crucial step towards living a life that is true to oneself. It forces the individual to confront their own existence and the choices that they are responsible for making. To cope with the absurd, one might first consider the philosophy of Albert Camus, who wrote extensively about this concept. Camus argued that the realization of the absurd should not lead to suicide, but rather to a rebellion against this idea. His idea of rebellion involves a constant confrontation with the absurd, but also a refusal to let it dictate one's actions or to succumb to nihilism. By maintaining a personal integrity and a commitment to pursue meaning on one's own terms, individuals can live in defiance of the absurd. The process of coping often involves reframing one's perspective on life and its meaning. Instead of seeking an absolute or universal meaning, existential thinkers advocate for the construction of individual meaning. This is not to suggest that meaning is arbitrary or relative in a simplistic way, but rather that it is something one must actively pursue and confirm in the choices one makes. Through personal commitment to values and goals chosen by oneself, an individual constructs a life that has personal significance, even within an indifferent universe. Another essential coping mechanism lies in the acceptance of limitations. Humans are finite creatures with limited knowledge and power. Recognizing one's constraints can be seen not as a defeat, but as an opportunity to focus efforts and attention on what can genuinely be influenced or enjoyed. It is within the limits of the human condition that people find the freedom to create, the ability to love, and the potential for growth. In addition to personal reflection and acceptance, dialogue with others can also prove to be an important way of coping. In recognizing common struggles and shared conditions, individuals can find solidarity and understanding that diminish feelings of isolation. Existential therapists, for instance, often facilitate such dialogues, offering guidance in exploring existential themes and aiding patients in developing strategies for living with the absurd. Active engagement in the world is another method for coping with the absurd. Doing work that feels impactful, contributing to a community, or creating art can serve as affirmations of one's existence and ways to counter the feelings of ineffectuality. Such engagements require a sincere effort and are often pursued in spite of any doubt about their ultimate significance, thus embodying the rebellious spirit against the absurd advocated by Camus. A concept closely tied to active engagement is that of authenticity, which is central to existentialist philosophy. To be authentic is to act in accordance with one's self-defined essence rather than conforming to externally imposed roles or expectations. This concept discourages escapist tendencies or the denial of the absurd, encouraging instead a steadfast acknowledgement and personal accountability for one's existence. Authenticity fosters a congruence between one's values, beliefs, and actions, which can provide a fulfilling sense of coherence in life. Existentialist literature and therapy often emphasize the importance of imagination in coping with the absurd. Visualization can play a key role in overcoming existential despair by providing a mental space in which individuals can reframe their understanding of their existence. Imagination allows for the exploration of possibilities beyond the present circumstances, enabling one to envision different life paths and outcomes that could imbue life with new meaning and purpose. Lastly, the practice of mindfulness is increasingly recognized as beneficial in existential coping. Mindfulness encourages individuals to exist in the present moment, fully experiencing life as it happens, rather than being consumed by the past or paralyzed by uncertainty about the future. This present-centered awareness can lead to a deeper appreciation of life's experiences and foster a sense of tranquility in the face of absurdity. Mindfulness practices can help individuals to navigate the tension between seeking personal meaning and accepting the lack of inherent meaning in the universe. Coping with the absurd is a multifaceted endeavor that involves a combination of personal reflection, acceptance of existence, engagement with life, the pursuit of authenticity, imaginative foresight, and mindfulness. Although the struggle against the innate absurdity of life may never be fully resolved, it is through these coping strategies that individuals find the resilience to forge their paths and live with a sense of purpose, according to their own defined terms. The journey through angst and despair may not lead to an ultimate answer, but it does provide the opportunity for personal growth and self-defined fulfillment. 5.8. Suicide and Existentialism. Suicide and existential thought is a complex topic that reflects the deepest aspects of personal anguish and despair. Within the discourse of existentialism, suicide is not merely an act of ending one's life, but a critical moment of choice that reflects on the meaning or meaninglessness of existence. Philosophers who have contributed to existentialist thought, such as Søren Kierkegaard, Jean-Paul Sartre, and Albert Camus, have approached the subject of suicide from different perspectives, yet they converge on the point that it is a fundamental existential issue. This section elucidates the existential perspective on suicide by examining the thoughts of these philosophers and analyzing the implications for the understanding of human freedom and responsibility. Søren Kierkegaard, often considered the father of existentialism, viewed despair as an inevitable part of the human condition. He believed that despair arises from the tension between the finite and the infinite within individuals, the disparity between our temporal existence and our eternal possibilities. In his work, Kierkegaard interprets suicide as an act of defiance against God, as it is the individual's attempt to assert control over their own life and death. However, for Kierkegaard, the true resolution of despair does not lie in suicide, but in a leap of faith, where the individual places trust in God and embraces the possibilities that lie beyond rational understanding. Jean-Paul Sartre's approach to existentialism emphasized the radical freedom and responsibility of individuals to create their own essence through their choices. Sartre contended that since existence precedes essence, individuals are thrust into a world without inherent meaning, and it is through actions that they define themselves. Regarding suicide, Sartre argued that it is an option that individuals may consider when confronting the absurdity of existence, but it represents an ultimate escape from freedom. For Sartre, to commit suicide is to deny the very freedom that defines human existence, thus disregarding the responsibility one has to oneself and others to confront despair and make meaning through living. Albert Camus, another key existentialist thinker, explored the theme of suicide in his essay, The Myth of Sisyphus. Camus begins by stating that the fundamental question of philosophy is whether or not to commit suicide, thereby asserting the importance of addressing the topic head-on. Camus describes the human condition as fundamentally absurd, as humans have an intrinsic desire for meaning in a world that offers none. He argues that suicide is a confession that life is not worth living, and is a surrender to the absurdity of existence. For Camus, the appropriate response to the absurd is not suicide, but rather rebellion, a constant and conscious confrontation with the absurdity of life by continually seeking to live in spite of it. Existentialists suggest that suicide stems from a perception of a lack of meaning in one's life, a condition often referred to as existential angst or anxiety. This condition is a natural reaction to the recognition of one's freedom and the weight of the accompanying responsibility. In existentialism, angst is seen as a sign of moral and psychological maturity, indicating an awareness of the complexities of life and the absence of objective values or given truths. Thus, from an existential point of view, confronting this angst is essential for living authentically, while suicide could be interpreted as a refusal to face this existential anxiety and engage with life's inherent challenges. Suicide is also considered within the context of existential isolation, a feeling that emerges from the recognition that one is ultimately alone in making sense of their existence. When one perceives their life as devoid of meaning and relationships with others as failing to alleviate this sense of isolation, an individual may contemplate suicide as a means to end the suffering associated with these existential realizations. However, despite this potential for isolation, existentialism posits that individuals can still find connections with others through shared experiences and by creating meanings that, while not objective or universal, are nevertheless authentic and personally significant. It should be noted that existentialists do not universally condone or condemn suicide. Their main contribution is to bring to light the philosophical implications of contemplating suicide. They raise questions about the value of life, the nature of human freedom, and the individual's responsibility in the face of suffering. An existentialist approach invites individuals to reflect deeply on their own lives, their choices, and the possibility of transcending despair through the active creation of meaning, rather than its passive, inevitable loss through the act of suicide. Existentialism also critically examines the societal and cultural understandings of suicide. It questions the societal taboos and the stigmatization surrounding the topic, suggesting that an open discourse is necessary for understanding the existential dimensions of suicide. This does not imply promoting or accepting suicide, but encourages thoughtful consideration of the conditions leading individuals to view it as their only option. Transparent dialogue can lead to a greater understanding of the human struggle with despair and can ultimately foster conditions that help prevent suicide by validating the profound difficulties inherent in the search for meaning. The role of authenticity in existentialist thought is significant when considering suicide. Authenticity involves living in accordance with one's own values and understanding, even in the face of absurdity and uncertainty. Existentialists argue that choosing to live authentically can provide a counterbalance to the impulse towards suicide. By sincerely confronting angst and taking responsibility for one's own existence, a person may find reasons to continue living that align with their genuine self. In this respect, authenticity becomes a life-affirming stance, a declaration that, although life may at times seem unbearable, there remains the possibility for individuals to carve out a space for their own meaningful existence. Lastly, the topic of suicide and existentialism is intrinsically linked with the broader philosophical discussions around meaning and purpose. While existentialists acknowledge that life's inherent absurdity may prompt considerations of suicide, they also argue that individuals have the capacity to impose their own meanings onto life. This does not assure that despair will be fully eradicated, but it offers a pathway through which one may navigate despair without resorting to suicide. It is in this creative process of meaning-making where existentialists find a powerful antidote to the nihilistic inclinations that can lead to contemplations of suicide. While existentialism regards suicide as a philosophical and ethical issue of paramount importance, it does not offer a simple verdict on its justifiability. Instead, it emphasizes the importance of confronting the anguish and despair that can lead to suicidal thoughts. Existentialist philosophy is fundamentally concerned with how individuals can endure and surmount despair by embracing freedom, choice, and the pursuit of authenticity, even in the absence of a given meaning to life. Through such an approach, existentialism posits that individuals can assert their existence and find their own subjective pathways to living meaningful lives amidst the awareness of life's inevitable absurdities. 5.9 Hope and Resolution. Existentialism, as a philosophical movement, often emphasizes the individual's navigation through a seemingly meaningless or absurd universe. Within this context, concepts such as angst and despair have substantial significance as they relate to the individual's confrontation with existential dilemmas. Angst, a term often associated with the work of Søren Kierkegaard, describes a deep-seated anxiety or dread that arises from human freedom and responsibility. Despair, on the other hand, signifies a loss of hope or a failure to achieve self-fulfillment. However, the journey through existentialism does not terminate in perpetual anguish. Rather, it opens the possibility for hope and resolution. Angst can be understood as the feeling of profound unease that one experiences upon recognizing the extent of one's freedom and the weight of the choices one must make. This condition is not a superficial fear, but an intrinsic part of the human condition that stems from an awareness of the boundless possibilities that define one's existence. The experience of angst is crucial to the process of self-realization, as it forces the individual to confront their authentic self, making them acutely aware of their capability to shape their own destiny. The existentialist views this confrontation not as an end, but as a critical step towards personal growth and authenticity. Despair manifests when an individual is confronted with the difficulties in actualizing one's true self, or when facing the inherent limitations of human existence. It represents the emotional response to the recognition of one's failures, whether perceived or actual, in exerting control over one's life and purpose. Existential despair arises from the realization that life does not possess intrinsic meaning, which can lead to a sense of powerlessness. Yet it is imperative to recognize that this realization also serves as a catalyst for seeking a deeper understanding and purpose that is self-defined, rather than externally imposed. The resolution to both angst and despair requires individuals to embrace, rather than deny, their existence within an enigmatic universe. This entails the acceptance that life may not have an inherent meaning, and that it is the individual's responsibility to create that meaning through choices and actions. Kierkegaard posits that taking a leap of faith is a way to transcend the paralysis induced by angst and despair. He suggests that through faith, one can find a form of resolution that anchors one's existence beyond the rational confines of the intellect. Whereas Kierkegaard proposes faith as a solution, philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre offers an alternative resolution through authentic living and the assumption of full responsibility for one's choices. To Sartre, despair is a consequence of not acknowledging one's absolute freedom, and therefore the path to resolution lies in authentically exercising that freedom. He argues that by doing so, individuals can transcend despair by defining their essence through their actions. Additionally, the concept of hope plays a central role in overcoming existential despair. Hope is not understood as a passive waiting for circumstances to improve, but as an active engagement in creating a future that aligns with one's values and goals. Hope involves imagining a better state of affairs and working purposefully towards that vision, despite understanding the lack of guarantees. It is an assertion of one's ability to influence one's future, exemplified in the existentialist commitment to freedom and responsibility. Hope in the existentialist framework is not naive optimism, but a profound awareness of the potential within the constraints of one's condition. When faced with the reality of a finite existence and inevitable mortality, existential hope emphasizes the possibilities that can be realized within this limited framework. This orientation encourages individuals to make the most of each moment and to invest themselves fully in the pursuit of creating purposeful and enriched lives. Resolution, as understood in existential philosophy, signifies the reconciliation with the absurdist predicament of human life. It involves the recognition of the paradox of seeking meaning in an indifferent universe, and the decision to live resolutely within that framework. This stance does not deny the existence of angst and despair, but integrates them into a broader understanding of the human experience. Resolution encompasses the acceptance of life's uncertainties and the commitment to forge a meaningful existence in spite of them. The journey through existential themes of angst and despair, culminating in hope and resolution, is not linear but cyclical. Individuals may find themselves revisiting these states throughout their lives as they face new challenges and reassess their values and beliefs. This process is reflective of the dynamic nature of human existence and the ongoing quest for self-understanding. In this way, existentialism provides not just a philosophical outlook, but a practical approach to living, which emphasizes continuous growth and development. Existentialism acknowledges the depth of human angst and despair, while simultaneously advocating for the capacity to rise above these states through hope and resolution. It presents a framework wherein individuals are empowered to navigate the complexities of existence with courage and determination. By taking ownership of one's condition and actively engaging in the construction of personal meaning, one can find semblance and fulfillment in a world that is inherently devoid of absolute answers. Thus, existentialism invites each person to embrace the liberation and challenge of crafting an authentic life amid uncertainty and contingency. 5.10 The Path to Inner Peace. The experience of angst and despair is central to the philosophy of existentialism. These intense emotional responses emerge from an individual's confrontation with the inherent absurdity of life, the inevitability of death, and the pressure of personal freedom and responsibility. This existential recognition can lead to profound psychological discomfort. However, it also marks the beginning of one's journey towards inner peace. Achieving inner peace in an existential framework involves an active engagement with one's existential conditions and a series of personal transformations. Inner peace within an existentialist context is not the absence of turmoil, but rather a state of understanding and acceptance. It requires recognizing that angst and despair are not merely obstacles to be removed, but integral parts of the human experience. To start on the path to inner peace, individuals must first reflect on their experiences of angst and despair. This reflection entails an honest acknowledgement of their emotions and the underlying existential realities they signify, such as our freedom, isolation, and the search for meaning in a universe that offers no clear answers. Accepting responsibility for one's own life is the next critical step towards inner peace. Existentialism posits that humans are free and must therefore accept the burden of shaping their own existence. This acceptance helps individuals realize the potential within their freedom, even amidst the uncertainty that life presents. It is through the act of choosing one's actions, attitudes, and personal values that a person begins to affirm their existence and exercise their freedom in a way that fosters inner peace. This sense of agency can help mitigate the feelings of despair that come from perceiving life as arbitrary and without purpose. Engaging with authentic existence is another key process. Authenticity, in the existential sense, means living in accordance with one's true self, rather than following external expectations or societal norms without question. When individuals strive for authenticity, they align their actions with their personal beliefs and values. This alignment reduces the internal conflict that can be a source of angst and contributes to a sense of inner harmony. It can also foster a more profound connection with others, as relationships built on authenticity tend to be more meaningful and less conflict-ridden. Developing resilience against existential anxiety is essential on the path to inner peace. Resilience here does not mean becoming impervious to the feelings of angst and despair, but learning to live with them constructively. It involves cultivating the ability to bounce back from these emotional states and finding ways to grow from the experience. Building resilience can include regular introspection, developing a strong support system of relationships, and engaging in practices that promote mental and emotional well-being, such as meditation or therapy. Confronting death anxiety is a fundamental aspect of finding inner peace. An acute awareness of mortality is a common source of existential fear, but it can also bring clarity and perspective. By confronting the reality of death, individuals can appreciate the preciousness of life and the urgency of living it fully. This understanding can diminish the paralyzing effect of death anxiety and inspire a more intentional and passionate approach to life's experiences. Embracing the finite nature of existence can thereby transform the terror of oblivion into a motivational force. The attainment of inner peace is closely linked to the creation of meaning. While existentialism suggests that life has no inherent purpose, it also empowers individuals to ascribe their own meaning to existence. Crafting a personal narrative that encompasses one's aspirations, struggles, and triumphs can instill life with significance. Meaning-making does not eliminate angst and despair. Instead, it provides a framework that allows individuals to navigate these experiences with a sense of direction and fulfillment. Fostering a sense of universal interconnectedness can also alleviate feelings of isolation that accompany existential angst. Recognizing oneself as part of a larger human narrative, or as a member of a community, can provide comfort. Though existentialism often emphasizes individuality and personal responsibility, it does not preclude the human desire for connection. Connections with others, whether on an intimate scale or through a broader sense of solidarity with humanity, can serve as reminders of common aspirations and shared existential challenges, fostering inner peace through a sense of belonging. Finally, the continuous process of self-exploration is vital for maintaining inner peace. Inner peace is not a static end state, but but a dynamic equilibrium that must be regularly reassessed and cultivated. As individuals evolve and as external circumstances change, so too must their understanding and approach to inner peace. This ongoing self-exploration allows individuals to adapt their strategies for dealing with existential anxiety and recalibrate their commitment to personal values and authentic living. The path to inner peace in the face of existential angst and despair is complex and multifaceted. It is a path characterized by the continuous interplay of acceptance, responsibility, authenticity, resilience, confrontation with mortality, meaning-making, interconnectedness, and self-exploration. While existential concerns are an inextricable part of the human condition, the strategies outlined in this chapter provide a framework for individuals seeking to navigate these concerns with grace and to live a peaceful, fulfilling life. Inner peace, then, is not solely an endpoint, but a way of being and engaging with the world, a reflection of one's ongoing efforts to reconcile existential realities with the desire for serenity and comprehension.